Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Martial Universe Season 5 based on novel. So let's start. However, you are still as well. Life Force. I once read in ancient texts about a practitioner who obtained the devouring ancestral symbol in the distant past. Once that practitioner activated the devouring world, he was able to sever the life of all living things within 1,000. Little Martin was envious of that kind of power. Does the devouring world have no weaknesses? Lin Dong could not help but ask. If there was no way to stop the devouring world once it was activated, it would really be too much of a cheat. In this, I might not know about other weaknesses, but with the current way you have activated the devouring world, if you really want to kill those practitioners that have passed the Nirvana tribulation, there will be some difficulties. Little Martin replied while shaking its head. At this moment, Lin Dong then came to a sudden realization. He clearly understood how powerful those practitioners, who had passed through the Nirvana tribulation were. Naturally, he would not fantasize about killing such practitioners. Of course, even though you can't trap to death Nirvana stage practitioners, who have passed the Nirvana tribulation like what you did to Lei Shi and his counterparts, those practitioners still need to use an extremely huge amount as you activate the devouring world. Making an escape won't be a problem. Lin Dong slowly nodded his head, slightly excited in his heart. This degree of power had already surpassed his expected time. Lin Dong raised his head and looked at the devouring world before them. He could feel that the auras in the dark space were already extremely weak. With a smile, Lin Dong waved his hand as numerous ripples swept across the devouring world. The black light started to undulate before gradually fading. As the devouring world began to fade, the canopy of darkness that drove fear into one's heart started to dissipate rapidly. Soon after, numerous groans could be heard as 10 sorry figures fell from mid-air, and weakly landing atop the sea of trees. Naturally, the 10 figures were Lei Shi and his counterparts, who were previously trapped in the devouring world. The vigorous yuan power undulations that they gave off before had now completely disappeared. The abrupt withdrawal of the darkness was clearly something that Lei Shi and his counterparts could not adapt to so quickly. Ordinary sunlight caused them to squint their eyes while they were panted heavily, while their faces still displayed fear and shock. Clearly, they had suffered a lot in the devouring world. Lin Dong was very clear about the dark and dull atmosphere created by the devouring power. Parts were only trapped for about 10 minutes. It was enough to leave a scar in their minds. It could be assumed that they would not dare to enter any dark places anymore in the future. Lin Dong looked smilingly at Dong now. It would akin to throwing an egg against a rock. Upon hearing Lei Shi's words, Chen Mu and his counterparts' facial expressions changed drastically. Soon after, they clenched their teeth and activated the last bit of yuan power in their bodies and flew away in every directions. Even at this moment, Lei Shi and his men were able to retreat in a calm and systematic way. This certainly shocked Lin Dong. Undoubtedly, the Devil Cliff Empire was indeed a high-rank empire. This kind of discipline far exceeded those mid-ranked and low-ranked empires. However, Lin Dong would not allow Lei Shi and his counterparts to escape after taking great pains to set up this trap. Right now, he needed Nirvana pills urgently, and these people were the big fishes. How could he let them off easily? I'm afraid it's a bit too late to run now. As Lin Dong saw those figures scattering in fear, he laughed. With a jolt of his mind, boundless mental energy gushed out and became 10 huge mental energy-formed hands which pounced on that 10 escaping figures. Bang bang bang. Lei Shi and his counterparts were terrified when they saw the 10 incoming, huge mental energy-formed hands. They then mobilized the yuan power in their bodies and tried to carry out an attack. However, those huge hands were not even bothered by their weak attacks. Come back. With a swipe from Lin Dong's huge hands, those escaping figures were recaptured and thrown ruthlessly to the ground. The shock from that tremendous amount of force were able to make them spewed out blood violently. Lei Shi was the last one to be recaptured. Undeniably, this fellow was indeed capable. Even in this situation, Lin Dong had to exert much efforts to recapture him. Following which, Lei Shi's body was being thrown alongside with his men in a devastated state. They then shock. Not too long ago, they were still in an advantageous position. However, in less than half an hour, all of them had become Lin Dong's praise. What do you want? Lei Shi's face was pale. Apparently, he did not expect themselves to fall into such dire situation even when they were so well prepared this time around. Hand over your Chinkuan bags, and I don't wish to hear any nonsense. At the same time, I hope I don't need to do it myself. Lin Dong smiled. His smile certainly struck fear into Lei Shi and his counterparts' hearts. Due to Lin Dong's smile, Lei Shi swallowed the stubborn words that he had been wanting to say. The look in Lei Shi's eyes changed and he could only accept this cruel reality. Right now, they did not have the rights to reject at all. Take it. Lei Shi took out a Chinkuan bag from his bags. He focused his mental energy on them. After a short while, an overjoyed look then appeared on his face. The total number of Nirvana pills in these 10 Chinkuan bags amounted to approximately 300,000. This was considered a hefty reward to Lin Dong. Other than Nirvana pills, there were some valuable demonic crystals as well. Moreover, Lin Dong was able to find 3 Nirvana stage beasts demonic crystals in Lei Shi's Chinkuan bag. The vigorous Nirvana chi from these demonic crystal was worth 10 to 20,000 Nirvana pills. Not bad, there are around 300,000 Nirvana pills. Without any trace of courtesy, Lin Dong kept these Nirvana pills into his own Chinkuan bag. Then, he furrowed his eyebrows. He did not want to attack the Nirvana stage carelessly before preparing an abundant amount of Nirvana pills. His targeted amount of Nirvana pills was at least a few millions. It's not difficult to get more Nirvana pills. These fellows are actually living Nirvana pills. Just as Lin Dong was furrowing his brows, little Martin's voice rang across his mind. Nirvana stage practitioners are extremely important to any high-ranked empires. Some of these people are in quasi-Nirvana stage. In the future, they might have the chance to attain the Nirvana stage as well. If these people are killed, the Devil Cliff Empire will suffer a devastating blow. Therefore, I think that the Devil Cliff Empire will pay a large sum of Nirvana pills in exchange for these people's lives. Upon hearing little Martin's words, Lin Dong was startled momentarily. Following which, his mouth began to form into a shape of an arc, which in turn sent a gush of chilliness through Lei Shi and his counterparts' bodies. Lin Dong then muttered in a low voice, "Kidnapping and blackmailing seems to be an interesting business." Although they did not know what Lin Dong was mumbling about, judging by his expression, Lei Shi and the rest knew that he was definitely up to no good. Immediately, their scalps turned numb. After fighting with him, all of them knew that this man before them was no virtuous soul, and God knows what strange method he was cooking up to deal with them. Lin Dong, if you kill us, our Devil Cliff Empire will never let you off. Even though your strength and methods are not weak, you cannot match up to the elite practitioners of my Devil Cliff Empire. You should be able to guess the cultivation stage of our top practitioner. He is a man you cannot afford to offend. Lei Shi was after all no ordinary individual. Even though his life was now at the whims and fancies of Lin Dong, he still spoke in such an unyielding manner. Don't I already have a death grudge with your Devil Cliff Empire? Do you really think I'm stupid enough to believe that your Devil Cliff Empire will forgive me if I let you guys off? Lin Dong chuckled. However, his chuckle caused Lei Shi to be taken aback. However, don't worry. I will not kill you guys. When they heard Lin Dong's words, Lei Shi and the rest were stunned. Lin Dong was all smiles. Promptly, he haphazardly chose one of them and tossed him, before he casually said, "Go back and report to your Devil Cliff Empire leader. Tell him that if he wants Lei Shi's life, he will have to exchange it for Nirvana pills." You actually dare to use hostages to extort our Devil Cliff Empire. When they heard his words, Lei Shi and the rest finally understood Lin Dong's plans. Immediately, all of them were stunned, before they promptly exclaimed in rage. Ask your Devil Cliff Empire to prepare 1 million Nirvana pills. Once you are done, I will come down to collect. If you refuse, I will give you some corpses in return. Lin Dong chose to ignore them, as he stared at that elite Devil Cliff Empire practitioner and said. That elite Devil Cliff Empire's face was a mix of a pale and steely green expression. Evidently, this was the first time he had met a madman that actually dared to extort their Devil Cliff Empire. However, he was no fool. Right now, Lei Shi and the rest were at the mercy of Lin Dong, and he had no right to speak back. I will send the word back. However, I wonder if you will have the courage to pick up those pills. That Devil Cliff Empire practitioner gritted his teeth, before he viciously retorted. Following which, he hideously turned around and fled. After Lin Dong saw that figure depart, He was all smiles as he turned around and looked at Lei Shi and the rest, before he said, "I have given you an opportunity to live. However, as to whether your Devil Cliff Empire leader is willing to forsake Nirvana pills in order to save you guys, it will have to depend on how much he values all of you. 1 million Nirvana pills. You are simply too greedy. I am afraid you won't have the stomach to handle it." Lei Shi gritted his teeth as he said, "Don't worry, I can easily handle it. In fact, this should not concern you. You guys should be worrying about whether your empire is willing to fork out the Nirvana pills. Perhaps, you guys are not even worth 1 million Nirvana pills in their opinion." Lin Dong stretched his back, while a peculiar taste lingered in his words. His plan was quite diabolical. If the leader of Devil Cliff Empire was unwilling to use Nirvana pills to secure the hostages, even if Lei Shi and the rest managed to survive and return, they would definitely feel unhappy. This may prove to be a hidden time bomb in the future. Lei Shi and the rest had a grim expression, while their eyes were gloomy. No one knew what they were thinking of. Lin Dong chose to ignore their expressions. With a flick of his mind, mental energy immediately penetrated their bodies and formed into a seal. This would prevent them from absorbing the yuan power between heaven and earth in order to recover. Furthermore, once they made any sudden moves, Lin Dong would immediately detect it. "It seems like we should leave this area first. Since I have obtained 300,000 Nirvana pills, I can attack half-step to Nirvana stage. Now that I have completely offended the Devil Cliff Empire, I should quickly upgrade myself." After finishing, Lin Dong was silent for a moment, before he promptly jerked his arm. Immediately, little flame leaped out from his sleeves before it transformed into battle mode and directly carried Lei Shi and the rest on his back. Following which, it flapped its wings before it dashed forth together with Lin Dong and quickly disappeared into the mountain range. After flying across the mountain range for a while, Lin Dong finally picked a resting spot. Waving his sleeves, he directly knocked out Lei Shi and the rest. Promptly, little Martin finally appeared leisurely. "I will attempt to attack half-step to Nirvana stage. Please help me to look after those fellows." Staring at little Martin, Lin Dong smiled as he said, "All right. However, before you do that, you should erase that blood seal inside your body. Right now, that item is completely useless." Little Martin nodded its head before it cautiously said. Lin Dong smiled. Without further ado, he immediately sat down before he calmed himself down and gradually entered into cultivation mode. As he slowly circulated the yuan power inside his body, he started to wipe off the blood seal inside his body. It took Lin Dong an entire day in order to remove that blood seal, and that item was indeed quite tricky. Thankfully, it was not too troublesome. By using his formidable yuan power, Lin Dong was able to get rid of it safely. After erasing the blood seal, Lin Dong stealthily heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like the Devil Cliff Empire will no longer be able to track him. It's time to attack half-step to Nirvana stage. Lin Dong had already advanced to peak manifestation stage for quite some time. During this period of time, he had already reached the pinnacle of peak manifestation stage. Therefore, once he had sufficient Nirvana chi, it was going to be quite easy for him to attack half-step to Nirvana stage. With regards to Nirvana chi, since he had just obtained 300,000 Nirvana pills, it was obviously no problem to Lin Dong. A puff of white air escaped from Lin Dong's nostrils. Promptly, Lin Dong lifted his palm, before countless fiery-red Nirvana pills gushed out from within his chinkuan bag and transformed into a fiery lake and hovered above him. When such a large amount of Nirvana pills, the entire domain seemed to have boiled, as traces of fiery-red Nirvana chi seeped out, and caused the surrounding air to turn dry. Lin Dong lifted his head. When he saw that burning stream of energy, he smiled. Promptly, his mind moves, before a black hole slowly extended behind him. Following which, streams of devouring force gushed out before all the Nirvana pills flew down and continuously tunneled into that bottomless black hole. As these Nirvana pills continuously flew in, Lin Dong's skin gradually turned fiery red. Faintly, one could see a sparkling golden glow. Devil Cliff City. This city had a fairly renowned reputation in the northwest region of the ancient battlefield. Naturally, the name came from the city's overlord, Devil Cliff Empire. There were numerous empires in Devil Cliff City, and most of them were mid to low rank empires. Of course, there were also a few high rank empires. However, all of them had to acknowledge that this city's overlord is the Devil Cliff Empire. The fact that they could force so many empires to acknowledge their strength, which even include high-rank empires, showcased the might of the Devil Cliff Empire. Right now, the latest rumors leading to the most uproar in Devil Cliff City was naturally regarding Lin Dong, who had the guts to actually kill a Nirvana stage practitioner from Devil Cliff Empire. Some of the more astute empires have already gotten wind of this information. This time around, the Devil Cliff Empire had sent a fairly formidable lineup in order to kill Lin Dong. Amongst them were Lei Shi, Chen Mu and other powerful Nirvana stage practitioner. Therefore, most people believed that Lin Dong was definitely going to die. That is because all of them were keenly aware of just how powerful those men were. When Chen Mu attacked Nirvana stage, he had used 500,000 Nirvana pills. Meanwhile, Lei Shi is even more powerful. Even though he failed to pass through the Nirvana tribulation, the fact that he could still survive indicated that his strength far exceeded that of an ordinary Nirvana stage practitioner. Furthermore, the rest who accompanied them were all imitation Nirvana stage practitioners, who were about to advance to Nirvana stage. Against such a lineup, disregarding Lin Dong, who had just advanced to Heavenly Symbol Master, even if there were two of him, it would be difficult for him to survive. For several days, these rumors were discussed enthusiastically in Devil Cliff City. However, when they saw that Lei Shi and the rest had yet to return, most of them felt perplexed. Some of the more astute ones even faintly detected that something had went wrong. Under this pretext, the city's atmosphere slowly turned increasingly heated. Even though the Devil Cliff Empire is the overlord in Devil Cliff City, none of them here were submissive individuals. In particular, though some of the high-rank empires typically feared the Devil Cliff Empire and did not dare to offend them, they still felt joyous when they saw them being on the losing end and losing their dignity. As this city heated up, 2 days had passed. Finally, several of them saw a hideous-looking figure jump over the high walls before he headed into the city. This city had no shortage of capable men. Therefore, they immediately realized that this man had left together with Lei Shi and the rest. However, when they first left, their ranks were strong and their morale was high. Yet, only one hideous-looking figure returned. As he stared at that hideous-looking figure, the Devil Cliff City descended into silence. Meanwhile, a horrifying though stealthily emerged in everyone's mind. In the middle of Devil Cliff City stood a tall spire. This was the tallest building in the city, and one could oversee the entire city by standing on top of the tower. Right now, the atmosphere on the top of that spire was so tense that it caused one's heart to shudder. All the elite Devil Cliff Empire practitioners were gathered here, while their eyes were in shock as they stared above the stone temple. At that spot, there was a man wearing white robes quietly seated on a stone chair. Though he did not speak, a terrifying icy cold aura spread out from his body. Under the stares from the crowd, that man in white robes seated on that stone chair gradually lowered his head before he stared at a trembling figure in the large hall. On his handsome face, there was a gentle and playful smile. That Lin Dong wants us to prepare 1 million Nirvana pills in exchange for Lei Shi and the rest's lives. When they heard that laughter that came from that stone chair, that elite Devil Cliff Empire practitioner that had been spared by Lin Dong immediately trembled. With his back drenched by sweat, he trembled while he nodded his head. Bang! An exceedingly powerful shockwind swept across the large hall, before that elite Devil Cliff Empire practitioner was viciously slammed against a stone pillar. Immediately, he vomited out a mouthful of fresh blood. Following which, he promptly bowed down even lower, and he did not even dare to wipe the blood stains off his mouth. A bunch of useless shit. The man wearing white robes finally stopped smiling, before he slowly stood up, while a bone-chilling expression hung on his lips. As he stared into the distant, a venomous glow flowed in his eyes. I will prepare the Nirvana pills for him. However, I wonder if he has the guts to collect them. Even though the Devil Cliff Empire tried to suppress it, the news of Lei Shi and his counterparts suffering a crushing defeat in the hands of Lin Dong still spread out in one night's time. This news certainly shocked the entire city as astonishment gushed through everyone's minds. Clearly, this result had exceeded the expectations of everyone in the city. At that time when Lei Shi and his counterparts set off, everyone had no qualms about them. Capturing a practitioner who had just attained the Heaven Symbol Master should be an easy task for this kind of lineup. However, the end result caused everyone's eyes to pop out. Moreover, the most distressing issue was Lin Dong's kidnapping and blackmailing. After this news spread out, even some disciplined practitioners went into a daze for a few moments before returning to their senses. Their facial expressions could only be described by one word: amaze. Even though the Devil Cliff Empire was not considered an invincible overlord in the northwest region of the ancient empire, they were still an extremely powerful empire, and even the other high-ranked empires did not wish to have any conflicts with them. The first reason for this was that the Devil Cliff Empire was indeed quite powerful. The second reason was that the Devil Cliff Empire was extremely vengeful. They will try to achieve their goals by hook or by crook. Hence, no one wanted to have anything to do with this troublesome empire. In fact, even when the Devil Cliff Empire was being tyrannical, no one dared to confront and offend them. Of course, this does not mean the Devil Cliff Empire could afford to be brainless. They also understood there were some empires that they could not afford to offend, and they would not be so foolish as to challenge those empires. Therefore, when some of the empires in the Devil Cliff City heard that someone wanted to blackmail the Devil Cliff Empire, it was as if they had heard world-shaking news. That kind of shock was indescribable. Thus, in the next few days, everyone in the Devil Cliff City was anticipating anxiously. They wanted to see if the conceited person, who had blackmailed the Devil Cliff Empire for 1 million Nirvana pills, possessed remarkable abilities so much so that he dared to do such a horrifying thing. Naturally, there were some people who felt that Lin Dong was merely bluffing, and from their perspectives, Lin Dong would not have the guts to come to the Devil Cliff City and collect the Nirvana pills. The fact that Lin Dong was able to defeat Lei Shi and his counterparts was amazing, but one must remember that Lei Shi and his counterparts were not the best fighters in the Devil Cliff Empire. No matter what kind of discussions were out there, it was clear that the people in the Devil Cliff City were waiting for that man's arrival. While everyone was anticipating anxiously in the Devil Cliff City, a distant mountain range was engulfed in blazing heat. A powerful current of energy, which was formed by fusion of Nirvana pills, hovered around the mountain like fiery red, glowing cassia. Astonishing waves of Nirvana chi was seeping out from his body, causing the nearby grass patches to be burnt and withered. In the mid-air, there was a black hole hovering over Lin Dong's head. The powerful current of energy that was formed by the fusion of Nirvana pills was constantly pouring into the black hole. With a terrifying speed, the energy was being refined into surging Nirvana chi, which then gushed into Lin Dong's entire body. This time around, the number of Nirvana pills that Lin Dong used was approximately 100,000. This is a reasonably large number. After all, when Li Pan was attacking the Nirvana stage, he only used the attacking the half-step to Nirvana stage, and he already took out this number of pills in one breath. No doubt, this is considered a large amount. With 100,000 Nirvana pills as backup, Lin Dong did not worry about the shortage of Nirvana chi. The only thing he worried about was whether his body could withstand such vigorous intake of Nirvana chi. Nirvana chi provides an extremely remarkable result for tempering and strengthening one's body. However, if it was forcefully absorbed and the body could not take it, a fire would ignite in that person's heart and eventually burned him from inside out, and not even ashes would remain in the end. Only those who had successfully passed through the Nirvana tribulation would have the ability to consume these Nirvana chi in a large chunk like what Lin Dong was doing. Therefore, it was rather foolish to consume 100,000 Nirvana pills worth of Nirvana chi in one go. If Lin Dong did not possess the devouring ancestral symbol and the lesser Nirvana golden body, he would be reduced to ashes. However, there is no such thing as if in this pills to do so. After being devoured by the devouring ancestral symbol, the previously volatile Nirvana chi smoothened down significantly. Furthermore, with the addition of the lesser Nirvana golden body, even though the process of absorbing Nirvana chi posed a few sufferings for Lin Dong, the worst situation clearly did not occur. He had successfully withstand the body incinerating Nirvana chi. Meanwhile, Little Martin sat on the back of Little Flame while squinting its eye and looking at the heat radiating Lin Dong. It could not help but nod its head slightly. Little Martin could feel that the yuan power in Lin Dong's body was increasing at a terrifying speed. Apparently, these 100,000 Nirvana pills had provided him with a lot of benefits. Given the current speed, these 100,000 Nirvana pills can be completely absorbed within the next 2 days, Little Martin muttered to itself. If the news of such absorbing speed was being spread out, people would pass out from shock. If this was some other guy who was absorbing 100,000 Nirvana pills, he would need at least half a month. However, with the help of the devouring ancestral symbol, Lin Dong could take in 100,000 Nirvana pills in a few days' time without any repercussions. And just as what Little Martin had expected, after 2 days had passed quietly, the previously hovering current of energy in the mid-air disappeared as the last Nirvana pill got devoured by the black hole. A moment of silence swept across the mountain peak. The silence lasted for around 10 seconds before a terrifying wave of energy swept out from Lin Dong, whose eyes were tightly shut. Some of the huge rocks around him were blew up into fine powder. His tightly shut eyes finally opened, and both of his palms seemed to be made of real gold, giving off the shine of gold, and appeared indestructible. With the official attainment of the half-step to Nirvana stage, Lin Dong's lesser Nirvana golden body also improved greatly. It was even comparable to some of the Nirvana stage practitioners' Nirvana golden body. Usually, when the half-step to Nirvana stage was attained, most people would be strengthened thanks to the large amount of Nirvana chi. Indistinctly, there would be signs of the Nirvana golden body forming as well. However, it was clear that they could not be compared to Lin Dong. Their strengthening process mostly consisted of becoming stronger, and even some outstanding ones might form a solid golden radiance on their bodies for a short period of time. However, they would never reach the same level of Lin Dong, whose arms looked as if they were casted from real gold. Lin Dong casually swiped his golden radiated palm at a nearby tree. As his arm made contact with the tree, his arm melted through the tree like a knife cutting through a piece of tofu. The degree of sharpness would make one tongue-tied. Not bad. Lin Dong was rather satisfied with his growth. With a smile, the golden radiance on his arms withdrew and returned to their normal color. He then stretched his body and stood up. Your absorption rate is faster than what I have expected. It seems you are getting more familiar with the use and control of the devouring ancestral symbol as well. Little Martin flew over and chuckled. Lin Dong smiled and casted a glance at Lei Shi and his counterparts, who were in a coma. He then spoke softly, I think it's time to collect the Nirvana pills. However, I feel that it will not be so smooth this time around, of his actions. Perhaps, the leader of the Devil Cliff Empire was already clenching his teeth and waiting for him to arrive. Hey, men die for wealth while birds die for food. Without Nirvana pills, it's impossible to break through the Nirvana stage. Little Martin laughed oddly while giving an expression, as if it wished for the whole world to be in chaos. Lin Dong bit his lips and nodded his head. He did not really fear anything. No matter how ferocious the Devil Cliff Empire was, he would still have a way to escape. Given the vastness of the ancient battlefield, would he even be scared of the Devil Cliff Empire flipping up the entire land to search for him? Furthermore, while you are training, I have done something to these people's bodies. In the future, if they dare to try anything funny, I will make sure they suffer. Little Martin chuckled wickedly. Lin Dong startled for a moment before breaking into laughter. Indeed, Little Martin had a lot of evil tricks up its sleeves. Even when they were going to use these people to exchange for Nirvana pills, Little Martin still would not let them off. That's good too. This can prevent troubles in the future. Lin Dong raised his head and gazed into the distant horizon. His eyes were blazing with flames once again. It's time to set off. I really want to see what is the Devil Cliff Empire made of. I'm definitely getting this 1 million Nirvana pills. During this period of time, Devil Cliff City had undoubtedly become the focus of attention in the northwest region of the ancient battlefield, and news that leaked out from here spread with a terrifying speed. As the news spread, it piqued a lot of people's interest. Some people even rushed to the Devil Cliff City just to see what astounding capabilities the man who blackmailed the Devil Cliff Empire possess. Undoubtedly, the popularity of the Devil Cliff City had risen significantly. Everyone in this city was anxiously anticipating the firestorm that was about to come. Under such anticipation and expectation, 2 days went by silently. Yet Lin Dong, who was supposed to collect the Nirvana pills, had yet to show up. Indistinctly, this led to people feeling impatient and suspicious. Could it be that this fellow was merely boasting and purposely annoying the Devil Cliff Empire? However, if this was really the case, it would be disappointing for everyone. Therefore, as time passed, sneering and disdainful comments arose in the Devil Cliff City. These people must have thought that the recent buzzing event was only a publicity stunt by the lad named Lin Dong. Naturally, no matter how rife the spread of the news was, the atmosphere was still solemn and somber in the highly regarded Stone Palace. That kind of pressure was enough to suffocate one's breathing. In the Stone Palace, there was a white-clothed man sitting apathetically on a stone chair. His pale and slender fingers were drumming softly along the armrest of the chair. The subtle yet crisp, drumming sound of his fingers echoed throughout the dead-silent Stone Palace, exerting a suffocating presence. Beneath that white-clothed man, there were many figures. These people were the elites from the Devil Cliff Empire. However, there were a few spots which were empty. When Lin Dong took out Lei Shi, Chen Mu and their counterparts in one swoop, he dealt a devastating blow to the Devil Cliff Empire. After all, a lot of resources were spent on nurturing these two men. Senior Shishien, it has been 3 days and there's still no sign of Lin Dong. Is it possible that he is playing with us? Finally, a figure could not help, but asked in a low voice after the pressured atmosphere continued for a long time. That lad is crazily daring. I wonder what methods he used to capture Lei Shi and the rest. And because of this, he dares to challenge the Devil Cliff Empire. However, these 2 days, he must have realized how foolish his actions were after he calmed down, another man sneered involuntarily. These 2 days, Lin Dong had stressed them out and therefore they were extremely angry towards him. Even though Lei Shi failed to pass through the Nirvana tribulation, he had still made great progress. Therefore, ordinary Nirvana stage practitioners shouldn't be his match. Furthermore, with help from Chen Mu and the rest, as long as it's not someone who has passed through the Nirvana tribulation, nobody should be able to defeat them. However, Lin Dong was able to do it, therefore, this man should not be underestimated, one cautious-looking man said in a deep voice while shaking his head. Apparently, not everyone carried the same attitude towards this issue. Upon hearing this man's words, many people curled their lips. Lin Dong, who had just attained the Heaven Symbol Master, should find it difficult to even defeat Chen Mu. Hence, it was hard for them to believe that Lin Dong actually single-handedly captured Lei Shi and his counterparts. Sitting on the stone chair, the white-clothed man, whose name was Shishien, looked indifferently at the commotion beneath him. After a while, he then plainly said, "Since the news of this incident has spread, we don't need to care about whether he is coming or not. The Devil Cliff Empire shall not tolerate a person like him. Once we capture him, I want his corpse to be hung on the Devil Cliff City's city gate. Otherwise, other people will forget about the notoriety of the Devil Cliff Empire. Therefore, if that lad really appears, anyone who lets him escape due to negligence will take his place and be hung on the city wall instead. Do not worry, Senior Shishien. We have already the necessary preparations. The moment that lad appears, there will be nowhere for him to run." Upon hearing the cold and emotionless voice of Shishien, the people in the stone palace trembled and quickly nodded their heads. Senior Shishien, Big Senior, is still in the outlands. Should we send a message to him and ask for his return? A man hesitated and asked. No need. Currently, Big Senior is fighting with other people over another mysterious ancient key. There's no need to bother him over a small matter like this. Furthermore, I want to see with my own eyes what capabilities does that Lin Dong possess, such that he dares to step on the head of the Devil Cliff Empire. Upon hearing these words, those people beneath Shishien nodded their heads respectfully. They were very clear about Shishien's capabilities. As long as Lin Dong appeared, there would be no escape for him. Shishien took a sweeping glance around the stone palace, and the sinister look in his eyes vanished gradually. He then waved his hand and let each of those practitioners to do their own preparations. Suddenly, his eye pupils dilated abruptly. He then stood up and shot a solemn gaze through the stone palace, and into a distant place that was far away from the Devil Cliff Empire. The corner of his mouth formed a sinister arc gradually. Finally coming. You are indeed courageous. Upon seeing Shishien's sudden movement, the people in the stone palace were slightly startled. Then, as if they had understood something, they turned around and looked beyond the city. Not long after Shishien had sensed something, the entire Devil Cliff city broke into an uproar abruptly. After all, there was no lack of talents in this city. Even if they were not as powerful as Shishien, they were still able to sense the same thing. Suddenly, powerful gales swept across the huge city. Numerous figures flew over the city, and threw themselves onto the city wall eventually. All of their gazes were thrown towards the distant horizon beyond the city. There was a black spot in the sky that was getting larger and larger. He's coming. Lin Dong is really coming. This fellow is really reckless. It's true that this kind of impulsive act will increase his reputation significantly, but I'm afraid he will not have the fortune to enjoy this reputation. Yes. Rumor has it that Devil Cliff Empire's Shishien is furious over this incident. That guy is someone who had legitimately passed through the Nirvana tribulation. Don't tell me Lin Dong thinks the method that he used to capture Lei Shi and his counterparts will be qualified enough to contend with an elite like Shishien. Humph, nonsensical. It was as if the entire city was erupting with emotions that they had accumulated after suffering in wait for a long time. Numerous whisperings broke out on the city wall. However, most people were rejoicing in the incoming black spot's misfortune. Of course, there were also a few people who looked interestingly at the incoming black spot. From Lin Dong's ability to capture Lei Shi and his counterparts, it goes to show that this man was rather capable, and was not a foolish individual. In conclusion, there were two perspectives on Lin Dong's insolent action. The first perspective was that Lin Dong was seeking death. The second perspective was that he was truly confident in dealing with a powerful elite like Shishien, and believed that he could escape unscathed. Those who possessed a meticulous mindset would automatically abandon the first perspective. That was because there is no one in this world who will want a shorter life. Therefore, the plausible one should be the second perspective, and this perspective aroused the curiosity of some practitioners. As part of the dwellers in the Devil Cliff City, they clearly knew about the prowess of Shishien. Even they themselves would find it hard to escape unscathed if they were contending against Shishien. Furthermore, Lin Dong had just attained the Heaven Symbol Master. Under such conjecture, numerous looks on the city wall were burning with fervent glow. The black spot gradually magnified in everyone's eyes. And finally, the black spot materialized into an extremely majestic, scarlet tiger-like beast. Under the illumination from the sun, as the tiger-like beast flapped its huge wings, its scarlet armor reflected dazzling radiance, which looked extremely imposing. A lot of gazes stopped on the demonic beast for a moment before shifting upwards. Following which, a young-looking figure then appeared in their line of sight. That figure had his arms drooping by his sides, while his face contained a wide smile. He did not look especially outstanding, but there were some sensitive individuals who could sense the menace hidden behind that smile. The demonic beast stopped at a few hundred feet before the Devil Cliff City. Lin Dong, who was standing on Little Flame's back, casted a glance at the dark and murky city. Then, he shifted his gaze to the stone tower located at the center of the city. With the help of vigorous Yuan power, a sneering voice then resounded throughout the city. Devil Cliff Empire, come and collect your men. Boom. After Lin Dong's laughter fell, a powerful gush of killer intent-filled Yuan power erupted from the stone tower. Then, a white-clothed man flew out from the tower and appeared on the city wall within seconds. His ice-cold piercing eyes were locked onto Lin Dong, who was still standing on Little Flame's back. Shishien. After seeing this man appeared, a commotion broke out on the city wall. Apparently, they had recognized the overlord of the Devil Cliff City. Then, they casted a look of rejoice at Lin Dong, clearly rejoicing over his misfortune. You are called Lin Dong, right? The fact that you dare to appear truly exceeds my expectation, Shishien said indifferently as he stared at Lin Dong with a pair of venomous eyes and his arms put behind his back. Lin Dong's gaze was fixated on this figure as well. The energy emitting from that figure's body was enough to make Lin Dong's eye pupils dilate. The Devil Cliff Empire was indeed extraordinary. It appeared that this fellow had passed through the Nirvana tribulation once, and could be considered a one-yuan Nirvana stage practitioner. Under numerous gazes, Lin Dong stared at Shishien and smiled. Then, the former stretched his body and extended his hand and waved at the latter. Let's cut the crap and hand over the Nirvana pills. The commotion on the city wall quietened down slightly and numerous gazes were casted in the direction of Shishien. At this moment, the chilliness around Shishien's body was getting increasingly stronger, and the sinister arc that the corners of his mouth formed was getting wider and wider. Everyone knew there was going to be an exciting show today. Part 1 end here.